Here's my sketch of the lumen, and here's the numbers I had. So forces out were 15 plus 1. Forces in are 20 plus 0. This is going to give me a net filtration pressure of 16 minus 20 minus 4. Notice it's always forces out minus forces in, so you're going to get a negative number sometimes. And that's how you know reabsorption occurs, and this is the venous end. Nice, huh? If you altered serum albumin, what would that change? You would be decreasing, where do I have it up here? Capillary osmotic pressure if you decrease albumin. So let's say maybe now that's 16 instead of 20. What's that going to do? If it's 16 minus 16, it's 0. We're not going to have reabsorption occur where we need to. We're decreasing the osmotic pressure drive in the capillary by not having enough serum albumin in there. And this is a problem. This last slide I'll show you is going to start touching upon that. So what is happening here is you've got filtration and reabsorption. In reality, slightly more fluid is lost, 24 liters a day, than is reabsorbed. So in the example before, if you didn't have enough serum albumin, this number would be even lower, and that would be a problem. What happens to this extra fluid? It goes to the lymphatic system to return to circulation. So if you had a deficit in serum albumin, maybe the lymphatic could pick that up at least a little bit, but you could have increased osmotic pressure in the fluid due to, actually, I'm sorry, that's not the right one. If you had a blockage of drainage, for example, you would have problems then. So various causes that can result in dysfunction of the system are increased hydrostatic pressure of capillaries, so high blood pressure, high blood volume, increased interstitial fluid of the, increased osmotic pressure of the interstitial fluid that can prevent this from happening how it's supposed to. So inflammation can cause proteins to build up here. You're then not going to have the correct pulls due to osmotic pressure. If you have too much protein here, decreased capillary osmotic pressure, that's the one we just looked at. So hypoproteinemia, low serum albumin, could decrease capillary osmotic pressure and prevent the proper reabsorption. And increase filtration at the other end, right? Another one is then if you have some blockage of the lymphatic system, that could also cause edema, swelling of the tissue if you don't have the lymphatic system draining this out, because there's constant, in all the capillary beds, there's more fluid going from the capillaries than there is back into the capillaries. Talked about how at the capillaries, all throughout circulation, filtration occurs at slightly higher rates in quantity, volume than reabsorption. So basically we have, as part of that microcirculation of the capillaries, excess fluid leaving the circulation, the blood circulation. The lymphatic capillaries pick this fluid up and prevent swelling in those tissues. The lymphatic system actually returns that liquid, which is lymph in between, when it's not blood, when it out of the interstitial fluid gets picked up by the lymphatic system, it's a lymph. Lymph travels through the lymphatic system. This is obviously a little oversimplified. I'm not going to tell you the names of these things besides lymph node. You may recognize that name. These nodes that contain structures that help to filter the lymph. ultimately, the lymph is returned back into the venous system to become part of circulation again. So that's a really good way to maintain our fluid volume of our blood pressure, really, and blood volume. So that's how we saw lymphatic system doing in the previous video. Here's a nice kind of zoom in of what that looks like in terms of capillaries, interstitial cells, tissue cells, and lymphatic capillaries. However, there's other lymphatic organs in addition to just these vessels and nodes. So I'm going to tell you about some of them. And there's some lymphatic organs that have like primary lymph function and some that have secondary. So I'm actually like, I'm not even going to, there's probably, it's kind of like the endocrine system where you could argue that any organ is endocrine. A lot of your tissues have immune function as well. So I'm just going to hit kind of some of the big ones. So some of the big ones are shown here. Lymph nodes, where I talked about, those cleanse lymph. There's also, so lymphocytes are a type of leukocyte, and they are proliferate in these lymph nodes. Another one you'll see here is the spleen. You saw the spleen in the rat, very red. It has a lot of blood. So the spleen is a site of filtering and cleaning of blood. Lymphocytes are activated and proliferate, also stores a bunch of stuff, iron, monocytes, and platelets. So various functions, with some of them being immune. We've got the thymus. This was on top of the heart that you saw in the rat. You had to cut through it to get to those vessels, the great vessels, when we looked at the rat heart. The thymus is important for T cells, so thymus T cells, so a type of lymphocyte that are activated, mature in the thymus, so primarily immune function. There's some others here, so tonsils you may have heard of. They actually contain lymphatic tissue. However, people also have the tonsils removed and don't seem to have any altered immune function. And then I think the last one I want to point out here, actually, I should have said this first, bone marrow. Why do I have this here? Red bone marrow is the site of synthesis of all blood cells. So not just red blood cells, but leukocytes as well. So leukocytes are first born here. These divide and proliferate throughout development. One type of leukocytes is lymphocytes. Lymphocytes include some cells that are important for innate immunity, but also those for adaptive immunity. So T and B cells that you may have heard of, T and B lymphocytes, are super important for adaptive immunity. And I have an extra credit option you can do looking into those more. So I don't think I said this, but the lymphatic system is responsible for immune function. So fighting off infection. Part of the immune system would actually then, immune system would be the skin, mucous membranes, all that stuff that's causing not just the white blood cells, but also the barriers for disease is all part of the immune system. Huge topic, right? In terms of immune defenses, immune responses. That's why the whole chapter in your book.